200 Russian tanks, the pride of Moscow's armored divisions, obliterated in a matter of minutes. It sounds like an exaggerated war story, a headline designed to grab attention. And yet, this actually happened. In a single devastating strike, Ukraine delivered one of the most crushing blows to Russia's armored forces since the beginning of the war. What should have been an unstoppable show of Russian military might turned into a smoldering graveyard of steel and fire. The question is not just how Ukraine managed to pull off such an extraordinary feat, but what happened next. Because this was not just another battlefield encounter. This was a turning point, a moment that stunned the world, forced Russia to re-examine its strategy, and left military experts everywhere questioning the future of armored warfare itself. In this video, we will take you step by step through how the strike unfolded, the tactics that made it possible, the devastating aftermath, and the global shockwaves that followed. A perfect ambush. To understand how this event unfolded, we need to rewind and set the stage. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has relied heavily on armored columns, vast convoys of tanks, armored personnel carriers, and supply vehicles designed to overwhelm Ukrainian positions with sheer firepower. For decades, the Russian military doctrine emphasized deep armored thrusts, massive armored punches into enemy territory, overwhelming defenders by force and speed. To the Kremlin, tanks were not just machines of war. They were symbols of power, intimidation, and unstoppable dominance. The Ukrainian advantage. But Ukraine was not unprepared. For years leading up to the invasion, Ukrainian forces had been training, modernizing, and most importantly, studying Russian tactics. With NATO support, Ukraine acquired advanced anti-tank weapons such as the American-made Javelin, the British NLAW, and cutting-edge drone technology. These weapons gave small teams of Ukrainian soldiers the power to destroy multi-million-dollar tanks from miles away, even in terrain where armored vehicles once reigned supreme. And then there was intelligence. Western satellites and reconnaissance systems fed Ukraine critical information, allowing them to anticipate Russian movements. By the time Moscow prepared another massive push with 200 tanks, Ukraine had not only predicted the assault, they had prepared the perfect ambush. The strike unfolded on a bitterly cold morning. Russian armored forces advanced in a long, seemingly unstoppable column, tanks at the front, support vehicles in the middle, and supply trucks at the rear. Commanders believed that sheer mass would overwhelm Ukrainian defenses, just as Soviet doctrine had once envisioned. To them, this was a routine operation, another step in their push forward. What they didn't know was that they were driving into a carefully laid trap, erupting into chaos. Hidden in the surrounding landscape, Ukrainian scouts and drone operators watched every movement. High above, small drones silently relayed live footage of the advancing column. Every tank, every vehicle, every gap in the formation was being tracked in real time. Ukrainian artillery units had already zeroed in on the convoy's path. Mobile anti-tank teams waited in concealed positions, armed and ready. The devastating aftermath. When the moment came, the battlefield erupted into chaos. Precision artillery struck the center of the column first, cutting off the rear from the front and trapping the Russian vehicles in a deadly kill zone. Drones swooped overhead, dropping explosives directly onto tank turrets, while Javelin missiles streaked from hidden positions, slamming into the flanks of the armored beasts. Panic spread as explosions tore through the tightly packed convoy. Russian crews tried to maneuver, but mines and barricades blocked their path. In minutes, the orderly advance dissolved into confusion and destruction. Tanks burned one after another, their ammunition cooking off in massive fireballs that lit up the sky. Survivors abandoned their vehicles and fled, leaving behind what had once been one of the largest armored pushes of the war. It wasn't a battle. It was a massacre. A modern-day annihilation that unfolded in less time than a single football match. The scene on the battlefield. When the smoke finally began to lift, what lay before Ukrainian troops was a scene of utter devastation. The once proud armored column that had rumbled forward with confidence was now nothing more than a graveyard of steel. Over 200 Russian tanks and armored vehicles, machines worth hundreds of millions of dollars, lay destroyed across fields, roads, and forests. Black smoke spiraled into the air, forming a grim marker that could be seen for miles, a signal of total defeat. For soldiers on the ground, the aftermath was surreal. The sounds of battle, the roaring engines, the thunder of artillery, the shrieking missiles had faded into silence, replaced only by the crackling of fires and the muffled explosions of ammunition still cooking off inside shattered vehicles. The acrid smell of burning fuel and melted steel hung heavy in the air. For many Ukrainian fighters, it was difficult to believe that such an overwhelming armored force had been reduced to ruins in such a short span of time. Some described the battlefield as resembling a metallic cemetery, where dozens of tanks sat frozen in place, destroyed before they even had the chance to fire back. The human toll for Russia. The human toll was equally striking. Russian survivors fled on foot, abandoning their vehicles as the ambush tore through their ranks. In the chaos, many simply ran, leaving behind not just their equipment, but their comrades. Prisoners later revealed that communication had collapsed almost immediately. The myth of Russian armored invincibility lay shattered. Crews who once believed their armor could protect them now realized they were targets. Slow-moving, vulnerable giants in a war where precision and agility reigned supreme. Some units even began refusing to advance in large columns afterward, terrified of meeting the same fate. Shockwaves around the world. When news of the annihilation reached the outside world, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. International media outlets ran the story with bold headlines, calling it one of the most devastating tank losses in modern history. The footage, shared widely on social media, went viral, showing endless lines of destroyed Russian vehicles, smoke rising into the sky like a grim warning to any army relying on outdated tactics. In Washington, London, and Brussels, NATO officials praised Ukraine's resilience and highlighted the effectiveness of modern Western weapons. Military analysts began debating whether this was the beginning of the end for tanks as we know them. If 200 could be destroyed so quickly, what future did armored warfare really have? Meanwhile, in Moscow, panic and denial collided. Russian state media downplayed the losses, blaming poor weather, sabotage, or even claiming the numbers were exaggerated. But satellite images and independent verification made it impossible to hide the truth. The Kremlin was forced to quietly admit a setback, while the Russian public, many of whom had sons serving at the front, began to question what their leaders were hiding. Across the world, ordinary people watched in disbelief. For many, this wasn't just another headline about the war. It was the moment they realized the conflict had entered a new phase, one where technology and strategy could rewrite history in an instant. A new age of warfare. In just minutes, Ukraine had not only destroyed 200 Russian tanks, it had shaken the very foundations of modern warfare. The annihilation was more than a battlefield victory. It was a symbol of resilience, innovation, and the changing face of war itself. For Russia, it was a humiliation. For Ukraine, it was proof that determination and strategy could achieve the impossible. And for the world, it was a wake-up call. A reminder that the next turning point in history can unfold in the blink of an eye. If you found this story powerful and want to stay updated with more in-depth coverage of the events shaping our world, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more stories that matter. This was Ukraine's annihilation of 200 tanks in minutes, and the shocking aftermath that stunned the world. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and stay with us.